I have a question because you also said tea is also like addiction. I understand that.
Yeah.
But what is when you have a garden and you plant some herbs?
Oh, well, this is now you're talking about something very different. You see, if I decided I was going to have coffee, and I decided I was going to plant a coffee bush in my garden, and it's only one bush in my garden. I've got lots of other bushes and trees and lots of other fruits and vegetables in my garden. And I decided that I was going to beat those beans until I could crush them up and use them and dry them out and use them. And I decided that I was going to do that. Now, I think that's a lot more sustainable, isn't it? Isn't that also a lot more loving? Because I'm taking responsibility for my addiction.
Oh.
Even if it is an addiction, I'm taking more responsibility for it. Right? If I had my cocoa tree in the backyard and I cut off all my cocoa beans and I lay them out and I dry them for 3 weeks and I crush them all up and then I split them all up and then I put them into a paste and a powder and I crush all that up, just like has to happen with my chocolate. It's a whole big process, right? And if I'm willing to do that to get my 1 block of chocolate a year, which is what it would end up with from one tree, and I'm not going to plant en masse a whole great big rows of them and destroy heaps of the environment doing it. It's just going to be in my backyard garden. That's sustainable. And it's also more loving to the people who have to do it for me and they don't have the backyard. It'd be better if they could have a backyard and be able to do the same thing for themselves. Right? It's more sustainable in that regard. So that's more loving. Even if I'm still in addiction, that's more loving than what I'm doing. Does that make sense? So, yeah, if you want to have a, tree in your backyard, tea tree, a couple of different varieties even, as long as the birds and the animals and people, and particularly people, are not being treated unlovingly and the environment's not being treated unlovingly from what you're doing, I don't see any... And it's an occasional thing that you have because you like the taste or whatever else, not because it was an addiction, and you're willing to do it for yourself, just like you're willing to clean up your own poo and wee for yourself whenever you make that, and you're willing to wash your own body for yourself, and you're willing to clean your own house for yourself and all of these kind of things. Well, as long as you're willing to do all of these things that most people view as unpleasant, right? This is why we pay other people to do it, but we pay them nothing to do it, right? Which is not fair. Like, they're doing all these wonderful things for us, all the people who make our flour, all the people who even make our cocoa for our chocolate. They're doing wonderful things for us, but we're not acknowledging or honouring that through the payment of them in a proper wage or a proper lifestyle. We're getting a proper lifestyle for us and we're basically shifting a lot of the responsibility for our desires onto other people, which is an unloving act. So I don't have any problem with you growing a cocoa tree in your backyard or a coffee one for that one, and occasionally having coffee. But do you think one bush of coffee is going to satisfy your coffee need once a day? Because if you look at the process of how many beans are required and how many beans come off a bush, you'll start seeing, actually, I'm using a lot more than one of those bushes myself a day. We have become even so divorced from the actual processes that create our food and and feed our addictions that we have no idea what's happening. And we like it that way, because if we knew, we'd have to change and we'd have to go, maybe I should have 1 square a day or none, right? And we'd have to change that, but we don't want to know. And so we don't want to change that. And then we say, my little thing is fine, but would you be prepared to do all of the work for yourself, is the question I'm asking you. Because if you're not ethical. And if you're not ethical, you're not loving. It's as simple as that. Right? So if I'm willing to go through planting a plant, not destroying the environment, getting the harvest from that plant, crushing it up, and the same, by the way, applies with flour, bread, and all these other things too, of course, because they all require processes, right? If I'm not willing to do all of those things myself, but I want other people to do it, then I am simply not ethical. I'm requiring somebody else to do something that I'm not willing to do. And a lack of ethics is a lack of love, right? So we find this in the God's Way organisation when we're helping people, right? When people come, there's people who come. I think here you've come, haven't you? There's a few who've come for a few months and everything. And what often happens is a person comes and we're out in the backyard. You know, when I say backyard, it's 600 acres or whatever. And you're digging holes and by hand and everyone's going, why haven't we got a machine to do this? It's like, you know, and it's all because we have so much demand that we don't have to be the ones fixing our own damage to the world. And yet, at the same time, we're in the illusion we're creating no damage to the world. And we're creating damage pretty much every day. Like Mary and I are very aware that every time we buy a bit of tech, we're creating damage to the world. So is the benefit to the world going to be greater than the damage we're creating? It has to be a question we ask ourselves, doesn't it? Yep. So we decided to fly to you guys to talk to you about truth. In that flight, we consumed heaps of carbon. It was all put into the atmosphere. There was a whole heap of things that happened. Mary and I at home, we have a tree planting thing of our own where we do our own carbon offset. Does that make sense? And we do that because we are aware that if we don't do that, we are not taking personal responsibility for the problems we're creating. Right? That's why we do it. That's why we have these environmental programs at home that we spend around about a third of everything we ever do goes towards them so that we can fix and repair damage. Now, a lot of the damage we're also finding in the process, we're fixing and repairing other people's damage as well, which is great because it means that at least there's some righting of the wrongs of the past, right, happening as well. And we're happy to do it because, like, the people who did the wrong of the past, they're now in the spirit world and they can't do it. So the ones of us that are left here, we're the only ones that can do it, right? So we've got to have a different attitude. And if love was driving us, we would have that attitude. But for the most of us, we are in denial and illusion about what is the truth about these matters. And we like the illusion, we like the denial because the denial lets us keep doing what we want, what we think we need. So we like it. And we're not admitting to ourselves we like it. Right? And to actually make some sincere change and become sincere people, and even, if you think about it, to have a relationship with God, I'm going to have to get out of my illusion and get out of my denial about it. Yeah? So what I've found personally is the more I progress and the more love I receive from God, the less I feel like having coffee. Or when I was doing computer work, you imagine we used to have a lot of very long hours in computer work. You know, I used to have 4 cups of coffee a day at least, and I'd be wired, you know, like doing, you know, there are times where I would stay up 4 days straight without sleep. Now, what do you think kept me awake? Coffee, right? So I've been there. I know all about the whole addiction thing and the purpose of it and why we would do things, right? But I've found that as I grow in love, and I, in particular, release certain emotions, the desire for these things just drops away. It's no longer there, right?